Drive in! Pick fast! I'll pay for any tickets!
That's what the HOA president screamed into a megaphone as 42 cars poured toward my gate on a Saturday morning, buckets on every lap, heading for 12 acres of Duke blueberries my late wife's grandfather planted in 1947. She had spent the week telling her 260 neighbors the farm had a community easement that did not exist. $21,000 of ripening fruit, an entire season's revenue, was about to be stripped in 3 hours by strangers who believed her. She was not enforcing rules. She was organizing a heist and calling it a community event. What she did not know was that I had spent 30 years as an agricultural attorney, and the sheriff's agricultural crimes unit was already waiting at my gate. Tell me below, would you have stopped them or let her put her own crime on live stream? Let me take you back 4 days, to the morning everything started. The sprinklers came on at 5:40. I know because I have listened to them every morning for 4 years, and I have stopped sleeping past the first hiss. I pulled on my boots by the back door. The leather was still damp from yesterday's dew, and the volcanic soil of the Willamette Valley clings to rubber soles like wet coffee grounds. My name is Thomas Brooks. Most people call me Tom. My wife Emily called me Tommy, but Emily has been gone 4 years this November, and nobody else has earned that name. I walked the middle row first. I always walk the middle row first. It is where Emily's grandfather planted the original Duke bushes in 1947, cuttings he brought up from a cousin in Michigan in a wooden crate lined with damp sphagnum moss. The bushes are older than I am. They still carry fruit like they have something to prove. Halfway down the row is a cedar bench with a small brass plate. Emily Wilson Brooks, 1963 to 2022. She grew what she loved. I touched the plate, the way a man touches a lucky coin before a job interview, and kept walking. Hannah Pierce was already at the cold storage shed, wrestling a stack of empty flats. 22 years old, horticulture senior at Oregon State, hair in a braid the color of winter wheat. She called out across the gravel. "Boss, Burgerville confirmed for 300 pounds. Portland Saturday Market wants another 400. That's 4 more hours of picking than we had yesterday." "We'll get it," I said. Saturday is going to be a day. I did not yet know how true that sentence would become. Back at the house, the first piece of mail that mattered was already in my hand. A cream envelope with embossed lettering. Willowmere Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. Mrs. Brenda Hollister, President. The paper had weight. Entitlement has weight. The letter demanded I sign over a 15-foot strip along my east fence line so Willowmere Ridge could widen Willow Glen Lane. In exchange, the HOA would consider waiving certain non-conforming ornamental use concerns related to my farm road gate. Translation: give us your land, or we will start inventing violations. I had never met Brenda Hollister. I had seen her. You could not miss her. White Tahoe, linen blazer over yoga pants, Ray-Bans the size of saucers. The kind of woman who parks in front of the school crosswalk because she believes crosswalks are for other people's children. I drove over that afternoon to decline politely. She stood on her porch with her arms crossed, a diamond tennis bracelet catching the sun, and smiled the way a principal smiles at a child she plans to expel. "You'll regret making this personal, Mr. Brooks." Then she shut the door. I drove home under a sky the color of old denim. Crows argued in the cottonwoods along Dairy Creek. I pulled into my gravel drive and sat in the truck for a minute. Emily used to say that every farm has 2 kinds of weather, the weather in the sky and the weather in the neighbors. Both could ruin a season. That night, I opened Emily's harvest ledger at the kitchen table. Her handwriting in blue ballpoint, still holding the line. Burgerville, Saturday Market, Lux Provisions in the Pearl District, 2 wedding caterers, 1 church, $21,400 of committed, written, paid deposit orders, all keyed to Saturday pick. I closed the ledger, the refrigerator hummed, the old clock in the hallway struck 9. 4 days to Saturday. 4 days to get that fruit off the bushes and into the hands of people who had paid for it. I did not yet know that, at that exact moment, Brenda Hollister was typing a Facebook post. Tuesday morning, I found the signs. 6 of them, zip-tied to my main gate. Cheap white corrugated plastic. Ink still bright enough that the wet grass hadn't blurred it yet. Public picking welcome. Saturday, 8 a.m. Brooks Farm. Bring your buckets. The lettering was that friendly Facebook community font, the kind designed to look neighborly while picking your pocket. Hannah saw them before I did. She came around the corner of the packing shed with a pair of tin snips in her hand and a face like a storm front. "Tell me I'm allowed to cut these down," she said. "Cut, photograph, date the photo, save the sign in the barn. That's a lot of steps for trespass. Steps are how you win." She gave me a look that was half respect and half annoyance and got to work. The zip ties snapped with a sound like popping kernels. She lined the signs along the shed wall like evidence, because that was exactly what they were. I drove into town and filed the report myself. Washington County Sheriff's Substation, concrete block building with a vending machine that sold nothing but Dr. Pepper. A young deputy with a shaving nick on his jaw took the incident down in careful block letters. Case number 24-0712. He also, bless him, photographed the signs on my phone for his own file. "Sir, you want a patrol drive-by tonight?" he asked. I said yes. A sheriff's vehicle parked on your road is a beautiful form of free advertising. Back home I walked the rows again, because I had learned years ago that worry walks better than it sits. The Dukeberries were at the blushing stage, deep Crayola blue, with a gray haze of natural bloom on the skin. Hannah called that bloom the fingerprint of a ripe berry. Touch it wrong, and you wipe the shine. At 3 that afternoon, the first car appeared. A silver Audi Q5 rolled slowly down the shoulder of Willow Glen Lane. Husband driving, wife with a phone held up against the passenger window, 2 kids in booster seats pointing at my bushes. I walked to the fence and raised a hand. The wife lowered her window halfway. "Is the picking today or Saturday?" she asked. "There isn't any picking, ma'am. This is a private farm. Who told you there was?" She held up her phone. There, glowing on the screen, was Brenda Hollister's Facebook post. Bright, cheerful, shareable, with a little banner graphic of cartoon blueberries. 78 reactions already. 23 comments. One of the comments was from Brenda herself. "Let's bring the whole cul-de-sac. This is what community is about." I smiled the smile of a man smiling at a train he is about to step off of. "That post is not accurate," I said. "There is no public picking. Please drive safe." They drove off. Their little boy looked back at the bushes like I had just canceled Christmas. By evening, the HOA's next-door thread had multiplied. Brenda had posted again, this time with the phrase, "Old man hoarding what should belong to the community." One comment stood out. A woman named Laura Bennett wrote, "Brenda, this is somebody's livelihood. We need to stop." Within 11 minutes, 6 HOA loyalists had piled on her in replies. She stopped posting. I took a screenshot of every comment. Hannah came into the kitchen as I was saving the screenshots. She watched over my shoulder for a moment, then set a jar of dry harvested honey on the counter between us. "My grandfather always said, boss, if you're going to keep your temper, keep your notes." It was the first time I had ever wanted to hug her. Late that night, I stood in the dark at the edge of the field. The air smelled of bruised leaves from the afternoon's short hailstorm, and, under that, the sugar smell of early ripe fruit. A grackle called once from the oak windbreak and went quiet. Somewhere in the darkness, a tractor idled at a distant farm, the diesel note low and steady as a heartbeat. I was not angry. I was calm the way a man is calm when he has just realized he is not the prey. Wednesday morning, my motion cameras arrived overnight. I started installing them at sunrise. Wednesday evening, the cable channel aired it. TVW Willamette is the kind of low-budget community station that runs garage sale listings between segments about the county fair. I was eating a plate of scrambled eggs over the sink when I heard my own name come out of the television in the living room. Concerns about community access to the Brooks farm on Willow Glen Lane, where long-standing easement rights appear to have been ignored by the current owner. I set the plate down slowly. Brenda Hollister was on camera. Fresh blowout, coral lipstick, seated at an HOA conference table that somebody had draped with a blue tablecloth to look more official. She held up a single sheet of paper, shoulders squared, chin tilted to the lights, and said the words "community access easement," the way a prosecutor says murder weapon. The paper looked real if you didn't know paper. I knew paper. I spent 3 decades looking at easements. What she was waving had a header that read, "Portland General Electric Utility Easement, Form 14B, from 1998, which had been expired and superseded for longer than her marriage. The body of the document was copy-pasted, word for word, from a template PGE hadn't used since the Clinton administration. In legal terms, what she was doing on television was called broadcasting fraudulent representation of interest in real property. In ordinary terms, it was called a felony. My phone buzzed before the segment ended. Margaret Whitlock, my old law partner, 300 miles away in Eugene, watching the same broadcast on her laptop. She is 67 years old, reads 3 casebooks a month for fun, and has the voice of a woman who has told many men to sit down. "Tom," she said, "tell me you're recording this. DVR is running." "Tom, that is tortious interference. On tape. On a broadcast station licensed by the Federal Communications Commission." "I know, Margaret." "Tom, this is the cleanest fraud inducement exhibit I have seen in 20 years. Do not do anything yet. Let her keep going." I said nothing. She took my silence as agreement, which is what it was. Outside, the second car appeared on the shoulder of Willow Glen Lane, a dark green Ford Expedition, retired couple, Oregon plates. The husband had the belly of a man who had earned every inch of it. He rolled down the window. "When does picking start, bud?" I walked to the fence line. "Sir, there's no public picking here. This is a private farm." He looked me up and down like I had personally canceled his tea time. His wife leaned past him. "The HOA said there's an easement, sweetheart. We got the email." "The email is incorrect." He raised both hands at the shoulders. "Well, I don't appreciate being called a liar." He thumbed up his middle finger at me, slow enough that it felt rehearsed, and drove off in a small cloud of shoulder road dust. I stood there a moment, watching his taillights shrink down Willow Glen. The air smelled of cut hay from the Carlson place next door, and very faintly, of smoke from a burn pile 2 miles upwind. A red-tailed hawk circled low over my east pasture. By nightfall, Jonathan Carlyle, Brenda's HOA deputy, realtor by day, bow-tie wearer by choice, had planted 6 small red HOA flags at the ditch line that bordered Willow Glen. Plastic sticks, cheap as a high school campaign. Each flag said Willowmere Ridge Community Use Area. There was no such thing as a community use area. He had made it up that afternoon. I photographed each flag. I measured each distance to my fence. I pulled every flag, bundled them with twine, and added them to the growing pile of Brenda's evidence in the back corner of the barn. Then I went into the kitchen, washed my plate, and sat down with Hannah at the table. She was 22 and furious. Her cheeks had the flush of a girl who had not yet learned how cold revenge could be served. "Boss, why are you not doing anything?" "Hannah." I poured us both a glass of water. "Rage is expensive. Evidence is free." She did not fully understand that yet. She would, by Saturday. By Thursday morning, Brenda's Facebook event had crossed 240 RSVPs. I learned this over coffee at the kitchen table, scrolling with one hand and feeding the old barn cat with the other. The cat was named Grayson. Emily had named him in her last good summer because she said his eyes looked like the ocean at Cannon Beach in winter. He did not care about Brenda Hollister. He cared about the splash of milk I put in the saucer. His priorities were superior to mine. The RSVP list was the problem. 240 families meant, on a Saturday in late July, something like 600 people. 600 people with buckets. 600 people who had been told by their HOA president that they had legal access to walk onto my farm and take what was ripe. The angry DMs started at 9. A man named Carlyle, not Jonathan, a different one, a Thompson I didn't know, wrote, "You should be ashamed blocking your neighbors from a community resource." A woman wrote, "My kids were looking forward to this. Selfish." A third message, blistering, ended with the phrase, "You're the reason people leave small towns." I read each one. I did not reply. Margaret's voice in my head. Let her keep going. At 10, my phone rang. Karen, my daughter, 29, data scientist in Seattle, pregnant with my first grandchild, the sweet and terrifying center of my remaining life. "Dad, what is happening?" Aunt Linda sent me a Facebook screenshot. "I'm handling it, honey. There are people online calling you names." "Honey, I spent 30 years being called names by people far better funded than Brenda Hollister. I am fine." She was quiet. Then, in the voice that she used when she was 5 and scared of thunder, she said, "Dad, please don't do anything reckless." "Sweetheart, I have never done anything reckless in my entire life. That's why your mother married me." She laughed, a small laugh. It was the first laugh I had heard from her all day, and it mattered. At 11, a text came in from a number I didn't recognize. This is Laura Bennett from Willowmere. I've been trying to find a way to help you. Can you meet me at the back of the Ace Hardware parking lot at 2 o'clock? Come alone. Don't tell anyone, please. I showed the text to Hannah. She read it twice. Boss, it could be a setup. It could, but she's the only one in that HOA who has publicly pushed back on Brenda, and she paid for it. She's not setting me up. She's scared. You want company? I want you to stay here and watch the gate. If I'm not back by 3, call Margaret. I drove into town. Ace Hardware in Hillsborough has a back parking lot that opens toward a drainage ditch and a row of scraggly black locust trees. Laura was already there in a silver Honda CR-V, engine off, hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel, even though the car was parked. She looked like a woman who had not slept. I slid into the passenger seat. The air inside smelled of vanilla air freshener and nervous adrenaline. She didn't look at me. She pushed a black USB stick across the console. Laura, if this is what I think it is. Mr. Brooks. Her voice shook once and then held. My husband is a builder. My son is going to college at Western Oregon next year. I cannot afford to be the person who blew this up, but I cannot sleep at night either. That's yours now. I took the drive. I put it in my shirt pocket. I thanked her without saying anything clever. Sometimes courage does not want to be complimented. I drove home under a sky the color of pewter. I didn't open the drive in the truck. I didn't open it on the porch. I walked out to Emily's bench in the middle of the Duke row, sat down, laid the USB stick beside her brass plate, and watched the irrigation hiss mist into a brief rainbow over the west field. Em, I said quietly, I think she picked the wrong farm. Friday morning, 6 a.m. Kitchen table, USB drive plugged into my old Dell laptop. Grayson the cat on the chair across from me, pretending the smell of my coffee was not offensive to him. I opened the folder, 462 files, board emails, attachments, zoning memos, an Excel spreadsheet whose tabs were labeled, without irony, Brooks Parcel, phase options. Laura had not exaggerated. She had handed me an archaeology site. The center of the site was a 9-message email chain dated back to March. 3 addresses: Brenda Hollister, her husband Gregory Hollister at his Washington County Planning Commission address, and a third name, Paul Whitmore, Chief Executive Officer, Crestline Development Group, Lake Oswego. I read it twice, then a third time, because lawyers are trained to reread good evidence slowly, the way sommeliers taste good wine. Crestline was trying to purchase the 40 acres immediately south of me for a 180-unit development. The parcel had been appraised at $7.2 million. The problem was the access grade. To build the loop road Crestline wanted, they needed either an easement across my east pasture, or, easier, they needed my parcel rezoned from EFU, exclusive farm use, down to RRFF, 5 residential resource, which would collapse my property value, soften my will to fight, and open a back door for Crestline to scoop up the cheaper acreage. Gregory's email laid the scheme out in the soft, patronizing cadence of a man who believed he was untouchable. Brenda can initiate the community pressure vector. I'll manage the Planning Commission procedural track. Paul, if we move the parcel to non-conforming within 12 months, the Commission's finder fee per our agreement is 3% of closing value, structured through Willowmere Ridge's Community Improvement LLC to keep it clean. 3% of $7.2 million is $216,000. Brenda's reply, 4 minutes later. Gregory, I'll have the optics managed. Give me until late July, and I'll create the public incident we need. I sat back. I set the coffee down so I would not drop it. The free picking event was not revenge. The free picking event was bait. Brenda did not want a crowd of residents to love blueberries. She wanted a crowd of residents to trample my farm, strip my bushes, flood my driveway, overwhelm my infrastructure, and generate enough complaints, trash, noise, traffic, alleged food safety issues, that the county would have the justification Gregory needed to move on emergency rezoning. I had been looking at a retaliation. I had not been looking at a trap. A trap is a more expensive thing. I laughed once, short, dry, an involuntary exhale. Grayson gave me a look. I picked up the phone. Margaret answered on the second ring. Tom. Margaret, I need you to clear your weekend. Tom, I cleared my weekend the minute I saw Brenda Hollister on that cable channel. What have you got? Tortious interference, fraud, criminal larceny by deception, conspiracy to commit fraud in a real property transaction, and, Margaret, listen, a county planning commissioner with a 3% kickback in writing. There was a long silence on her end. Then she said very softly, "Thomas Brooks, how would you feel about flying these exhibits in formation?" "I would feel," I said, "like my wife would have loved to see it. I'll drive up tonight, bring Ellen Sorensen from Farm Bureau, and make me a good pot of coffee when I get there." I hung up. I walked out the back door. I crossed the gravel, walked down the middle row, past the duke bushes heavy with fruit, and sat down on Emily's bench. I did not cry. I did not gloat. I took out a yellow legal pad and started making a list. Cameras, signs, gates, sheriff, Farm Bureau, press, process server, ethics complaint, civil filing, Laura's protection. The sun came up over the Tualatin Hills. The first bees began working the blossoms of the late-planted Liberty Row. I had 26 hours until Saturday. It was enough. By 7 a.m., I was on the phone. By 8, Hannah was on the phone too. By 9, 3 of her OSU classmates were in my driveway, unloading bags of rebar and cellular trail cameras, and enough cable zip ties to restrain a parade. Preparation is a quiet kind of violence. You do it at a table, in a truck bed, with a tape measure and a notepad and a list. And when it is done, the person who comes at you unprepared has already lost and does not know it yet. Emily used to call it setting the table for the wolf. We set the table. First, the cameras. 14 units, 4G cellular, motion triggered, with overlapping fields of view across the 2 access roads, the 3 field approaches, and the back fence line where Willowmere Ridge's cul-de-sac pressed closest to my property. Each camera fed to an encrypted cloud account and a mirrored backup on a hard drive locked in my gun safe. Chain of custody matters. Second, the signs. Oregon trespass law, specifically ORS 164.245, requires clear and conspicuous notice at reasonable intervals to support a later prosecution. I had 6 aluminum signs printed overnight in Portland and driven out by a friend of Hannah's at 4 that morning. Private property, no trespassing. Violators subject to $500 civil citation and criminal prosecution under ORS 164.245. We posted them every 100 feet along the frontage, at both gates, and at every corner a reasonable Oregonian would call a boundary. Third, the gates. 2 swing arms with magnetic latches, a checkpoint clipboard station at each, folding canopies in case the sun or the rain decided to have an opinion on Saturday. The checkpoint was not for residents. It was to document, refuse, and cite anyone who chose to cross the line. Fourth, the law. Sheriff Nathan Caldwell drove out at 1 p.m. in an unmarked Ford. He was 61, silver mustache, Washington County Agricultural Crimes Unit, a man who had spent his career dealing with rustled cattle and stolen tractors. He sat at my kitchen table drinking black coffee while I laid out the emails, the cable broadcast, the Facebook post, and the event RSVP count. He did not interrupt. When I was done, he said, "Mr. Brooks, what you are describing is organized theft by deception under ORS 164.085. And if she shows up and tells people to ignore posted signs, that becomes criminal solicitation." He tapped his pen once on the table. "I'll have 4 deputies here at 6:45 Saturday morning. I'll be here at 7. Fifth, the press. Claire Sutton, KGW Agriculture Desk, returned my call at 2. I did not tell her the whole story. I told her there was going to be an opening event at a local berry farm on Saturday morning, and it might be worth a camera. She has covered Oregon farms for 15 years. She said, "Tom, you're being cagey. Should I bring the live truck?" I said, "Claire, bring whatever you usually bring when you bring enough." Sixth, the paperwork. Margaret arrived at 4 with Ellen Sorensen of Oregon Farm Bureau, a woman who walked like she had never been intimidated by a man in her life, and probably never would be. The 2 of them set up on my dining room table and built 3 documents in parallel. A civil complaint, compensatory damages of $21,400, punitive damages at $100,000, tortious interference with business expectancy, fraud, and conspiracy. An Oregon Government Ethics Commission complaint against Gregory Hollister. And a motion for temporary restraining order, signed and ready, to be filed Monday morning the second the courthouse opened. Seventh, Laura Bennett. Margaret walked Laura through Oregon's 2-party consent statute and gave her a small digital recorder the size of a car key fob. Laura agreed to wear it to Friday evening's emergency HOA meeting, where Gregory was planning to ram through an emergency community easement resolution, an illegal procedural move that would itself become evidence. Eighth, the little things. Hannah lined up 50 laminated checkpoint scripts, each reading, "Resident, please turn around. This is private property, and there is no community access." I printed 50 self-addressed postcards to send to residents afterward, offering a $10 voucher for an actual paid picking day later in the summer, because you do not win neighborhoods by being right. You win them by being gracious after you are right. By 7 that evening, the farm looked like a small county courthouse in field dress. Hannah stood at the gate watching the last truck leave. She looked at me and said, "Boss, I have never in my life prepared so hard to do nothing." "Hannah," I said, "you are about to learn the most valuable thing a farmer can learn. Sometimes the whole job is standing still while the weather destroys itself." That night, I taped Emily's photograph to the dashboard of my pickup. "Big day tomorrow, Em." At 3 p.m. Friday, Brenda posted a reel. 30 seconds, filmed in portrait mode in front of her white Tahoe, one hand on the hood, the other holding the fake easement document like a medal. Coral lipstick, sunglasses pushed up on her head. She was using one of those filters that smooths out skin and makes a person look like a waxwork of herself. "Willowmere family," she said, "we did it. Tomorrow at 8 a.m., we open the farm that's been held hostage by one stubborn old man for too long. Bring your buckets, bring your kids, bring your appetite. This is what community looks like." 312 reactions in the first hour. At 4 p.m., the county code enforcement truck rolled into my driveway. Dust off the gravel. A polite young inspector in a polo shirt with a laminated badge. I walked out to meet him. "Mr. Brooks, we received a complaint that you are operating an unlicensed apiary on this property." I did not smile, though I wanted to. "Come with me, please." I walked him to the honey shed. I unlocked the door. On the wall, in a plexiglass frame, was my Oregon Department of Agriculture apiary registration, current to December, and beside it, my Washington County Farm Bureau bee permit decal. He read both. He exhaled through his nose. "Sir, I am sorry to have troubled you. May I ask who the complainant was?" It was almost certainly Mrs. Brenda Hollister, president of Willowmere Ridge HOA. He wrote that down. He thanked me. He left. I wrote down the time of his visit, the license plate of his truck, his name, and the fact that Brenda had now initiated a documented false report to a public enforcement officer. That went onto the pile. At 6:15, Laura Bennett sat down at the folding chairs in the Willowmere Ridge Community Clubhouse, wearing the key fob recorder clipped to the strap of her handbag. Gregory chaired. Brenda sat beside him, stroking her pen like a queen impatient to sign. Gregory opened with a motion to adopt an emergency resolution, recognizing a community use easement across the Brooks parcel, citing a PGE utility form nobody in the room had read, and nobody in the room had authority to interpret. The motion was illegal 7 different ways. It lacked the 48-hour notice required by their own bylaws. It lacked a quorum under Oregon's Planned Community Statute. It asserted jurisdiction over property the HOA did not own. Laura watched it pass 7-2. She kept her face blank. She kept the recorder rolling. She drove straight from the parking lot to my house and handed the recorder through the window of her car. She did not stay. She said, "I made my grandmother's chicken and I need to go feed my husband." Then she was gone, taillights disappearing down Willow Glen. At 9 p.m., my house phone rang. "Brooks," Gregory's voice, sanded smooth, the way lawyers think they can still fool other lawyers. "We should talk like adults before tomorrow gets complicated." "We can talk, Mr. Hollister. This call is being recorded. Oregon is a one-party consent state, and that party is me. Please continue." A silence. The kind of silence that smelled like expensive cologne and a man recalculating. "Tom, softer now. Give us the 15-foot strip. Don't make your Saturday a circus. We'll make it worth your while. 6 figures. Consulting retainer. We'll call it whatever you want it called." "Mr. Hollister, I'm going to ask you a direct question. Is this offer being made in connection with the rezoning of my parcel, being pursued with Crestline Development?" The silence now was different. It was the silence of a man who had just realized which side of the table he was sitting on. "Tom, that's not... Good night, Mr. Hollister." I hung up. I transcribed the call. At 10:30, my phone buzzed with a text. The sender was Jonathan Carlisle. The message read, "Hope you're sure about tomorrow. Big turnout confirmed. Bees confident. Keep an eye on that farmer guy's attitude." Then, 7 seconds later, wait, this was supposed to go to Brenda. Ignore this. I did not ignore it. I screenshotted it. I forwarded it to Margaret. She replied in 30 seconds. Tom, bedtime. You'll need the sleep. I slept 3 hours. At 4 a.m., I was already making coffee. Saturday, 5:30 in the morning, 53 degrees, dew heavy enough to soak boots through the stitching. I walked the perimeter with Hannah. She carried a flashlight and a thermos, and a jaw set so tight I could hear her teeth working. Somewhere past the Duke Row, a great horned owl called once, low and private, the last voice of night before the shift change. The cameras were green-lit across the app. The 2 gates were down. The signs caught flashlight beams like small aluminum mirrors. The checkpoint canopies stood up and square. In the east, the sky had begun to bruise toward color. At 6:15, 2 unmarked black Ford SUVs rolled down my gravel. 4 deputies in dark polos with badges on their belts, not in uniform but unmistakable. Sheriff Caldwell came in his own truck 10 minutes later, sipping from a thermos, nodding at the sign placements like a man inspecting a job well done. Margaret pulled in at 6:40. Ellen Sorensen 20 seconds behind her. They set up a folding table at the edge of the driveway with a stack of civil complaint copies, the Ethics Commission subpoena for Gregory, and a small, tidy pile of blank contempt citation forms. Margaret looked at the sky, then at her watch, and said to nobody in particular, "Lovely morning for a misdemeanor." At 7, the KGW live truck rolled up. Claire Sutton stepped out in a light jacket, cameraman behind her shouldering a big lens. She took one look at the 4 deputies, the 2 attorneys, the press kit on the table, the cameras on the fence posts, and the caravan not yet arrived, and said, "Tom, you sandbagged me. Claire, I promised you a farm opening. I did not promise you which kind." She smiled slowly. "I'm going to owe you for this. You'll owe me a fair edit. Deal." At 7:12, the first car came down Willow Glen. Silver Honda Odyssey, Oregon plates, roof rack, booster seats in the back. A young family. The father rolled the window down, confused eyes. A little boy in the back holding an empty Home Depot bucket the size of his head. I walked up to the driver's door. I kept my voice gentle. "Sir, I'm Tom Brooks. I'm the owner. The Facebook event you received was not authorized by me. There is no public picking today. I'm sorry you drove out here. I'd like to offer your family this." I handed through a laminated card with a $10 voucher for a paid picking day the following Saturday, signed and dated. The father looked at the card. He looked at his wife. He looked at his son. He said, "Mister, I'm sorry for being part of this. We'll come back properly." His wife reached across and squeezed my hand through the window. They drove away. Claire caught the whole thing on camera. Nothing wins a jury, or a viewing audience, like a stranger's quiet decency. At 7:26, I saw the dark gray Lexus, parked on the shoulder of Stone Creek Road, 300 yards east of my gate, engine off, a silhouette in the driver's seat. Gregory Hollister. Watching. I took a photograph with the long lens on my phone, time-stamped, filed. At 7:41, the radio chatter started. The HOA had given their caravan a group text thread, because of course they had. Hannah's classmates had joined it under fake resident names 3 days earlier, because of course they had. The lead car, a tall black Suburban driven by Jonathan Carlisle, texted Brenda with the words, "Something's off. Sheriff at gate. Cameras everywhere. Tom's got a lawyer here." Brenda's reply came back in the group thread at 7:43, in all caps, for 240 families and 4 law enforcement officers and 1 television camera to read. "It's his bluff. He's one old man. Drive in, pick fast. I'll pay any ticket." Claire Sutton read it over my shoulder. Her eyebrows went up the small fraction of a professional's surprise. "Tom, she just put that in writing." "She did." To 240 witnesses. "She did." Sheriff Caldwell walked over. He had been reading his own phone. "Tom, that message qualifies as criminal solicitation under Oregon statute. It's on a group text with documented timestamps. I am going to make this a very educational morning." The first headlights came around the bend of Willow Glen. I stepped to the center of my gate. The day had started. 8 o'clock, sharp. 42 vehicles on Willow Glen Lane, bumper to bumper. A convoy of SUVs and crossovers, and 1 embarrassing convertible. At the front, the white Tahoe, grille polished to a glare. Brenda Hollister at the wheel with her megaphone already in her lap. Behind her, residents leaning out windows with their phones. Buckets on laps, kids in back seats, confused by the 4 deputies and the television camera. A few drivers midway down the line had already begun U-turning in neighbors' driveways, reading the posted signs, reading the deputies, reading the writing on the wall. Brenda stepped out of the Tahoe. Linen blazer, white yoga pants, the giant Ray-Bans, the fake easement paper clenched in her left hand. She stood in the middle of the road like a woman who believed the road belonged to her. She put the megaphone to her mouth. Residents, this is your HOA. The signs are a bluff. We have a recognized community access easement. Drive in, pick fast. Any tickets will be reimbursed from the community fund. Do not let one selfish old widower hijack your Saturday. Claire Sutton's camera rolled. Margaret Whitlock stepped forward with a thick manila folder. Sheriff Caldwell walked up beside Brenda on her blind side, the way calm men walk up to agitated animals. Mrs. Hollister. His voice was quiet, unamplified, far more powerful than her megaphone. Step back from the gate. She wheeled on him. Officer, I am the duly elected HOA president, and I have every right. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent, and I strongly recommend you use it. A beat. A ripple down the caravan. The first car in line cut its engine, then the second, then the third. 2 cars in the middle, driven by HOA hardliners, who had convinced themselves Brenda knew the law, tried to nose past the checkpoint. Deputies met each of them at the driver's window, calmly, with citation books open. $500. Name, license, signature. No theatrics, just paper. The fastest way to deflate a convoy is a clipboard. Claire Sutton walked straight up to Brenda with her KGW microphone extended. Mrs. Hollister, can you confirm for our viewers that you organized today's free picking event at the Brooks Farm and advertised it to your HOA membership as a community-sanctioned activity? Brenda, fatally, answered. Absolutely. This was a community initiative. We identified an underutilized local resource and mobilized to share it equitably. Mr. Brooks's refusal to cooperate is frankly embarrassing for Willowmere Ridge. She said it into a live microphone, on a broadcast camera, in front of 4 peace officers, in front of 42 car windows and 106 cell phones. I will remember that sentence for the rest of my life, the way a fisherman remembers the exact moment the hook sets. Margaret stepped in. Mrs. Hollister, I am Margaret Whitlock, attorney for Mr. Thomas Brooks. You are hereby served with civil complaint Brooks versus Hollister, case pending, Washington County Circuit Court, seeking compensatory damages, punitive damages, and injunctive relief for tortious interference, fraud, and conspiracy. The papers went into Brenda's left hand. The fake easement fell to the gravel. Sheriff Caldwell took 1 step closer. Brenda Hollister, you are under arrest for theft by deception under Oregon Revised Statute 164.085 and criminal solicitation under Oregon Revised Statute 161.435. Put your hands behind your back. The megaphone hit the ground. The gravel absorbed it with a small, plastic bounce. She tried one more time. This is harassment. This is harassment. Do you know who my husband is? Ma'am, Caldwell said, snapping the cuffs. I believe we are about to find out. At that precise moment, up on the shoulder of Stone Creek Road, Ellen Sorensen from Oregon Farm Bureau had walked calmly to the driver's side window of a dark gray Lexus and was sliding a thick manila envelope through the glass. Gregory Hollister, you are hereby served with a complaint by the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. Please sign at the indicated line. Have a productive weekend. Gregory did not get out of the car. He sat, knuckles white on the wheel, staring at nothing. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a 3% commission was evaporating like mist off a field at sunrise. Claire Sutton turned her camera to me. The red light glowed. I stepped forward. I did not raise my voice. I had no reason to. Mrs. Hollister, I said, mistook a private farm for a public handout. Oregon's courts will clarify the difference. Hannah, standing behind me, let out one short, shaking breath. I did not look at her. I did not need to. I put my hand in my pocket, where Emily's photograph was folded against a laminated card, and I kept it there. 6 weeks later, Brenda Hollister stood before Judge Helen Morrow and entered a guilty plea. 90 days in Washington County Correctional, $75,000 in restitution, 5 years of formal probation, a lifetime ban on holding any HOA or community board office in the state of Oregon. She wore a gray cardigan and flat shoes, and she did not look at the gallery. The coral lipstick was gone. Jonathan Carlyle, who had turned state's witness in week 3, sat 2 rows behind me and studied his shoelaces. 4 months later, Gregory Hollister resigned from the Washington County Planning Commission. The Oregon Government Ethics Commission fined him $18,000 and referred the kickback arrangement to the Oregon Department of Justice for further inquiry. Crestline Development withdrew its rezoning petition in a 3-line letter and did not, as far as I ever heard, attempt another project within 40 miles of the Tualatin Hills. Paul Whitmore took early retirement. The 40 acres south of my farm went to a young couple from Tigard who want to start a hazelnut orchard. I gave them my old rototiller as a housewarming gift. The civil case settled before trial. $21,400 compensatory, $180,000 punitive, $65,000 in legal fees. Margaret took her cut, smaller than she had any right to, and drove back to Eugene whistling. I took the rest and did what I had decided. That morning at Emily's bench, I would do. The Emily Brooks Memorial Right to Farm Defense Fund opened its doors on a rainy Tuesday in October. A seed donation of $120,000, a volunteer board of 3 retired agricultural attorneys, including Margaret, and a simple mission statement: to provide pro bono legal support to small Oregon farmers facing harassment by homeowners associations, developers, or other institutional actors. Within a year, we had intervened in 11 cases. Within 2, 26. At Oregon State University, the Brooks Wilson Scholarship in Agricultural Law now sends 1 student a year through 3 years of tuition. The first recipient was Hannah Pierce. Her acceptance letter came with a handwritten note that read, "Boss, I told you I was paying attention." I framed it, and Brooks Berry Day became a thing. The first one, that September, drew 814 people. Actual community members, actual buckets, actual dollars. The pick fee was $10 a bucket, and every cent of it went into the defense fund. A bluegrass band played on a flatbed trailer. Laura Bennett, the new and properly elected president of a reformed Willowmere Ridge HOA, ran the lemonade stand. Her husband grilled brats. The young family from the first Saturday, the Odyssey, the booster seats, the boy with the oversized Home Depot bucket, came and filled it to the brim. The father shook my hand and did not say anything. He did not need to. That evening, after the last car had left and Hannah had locked the gates, I walked out to Emily's bench alone. The sun was going down over the Tualatin Hills, the way it had gone down every night for 77 years on this piece of land. The sprinklers hissed on. The irrigation mist caught the last light and made a thin gold rainbow over the blue crop rows. Grayson the cat picked his way along the bench back and sat beside my hand as if he had decided, at long last, to tolerate me. I took Emily's photograph out of my wallet. I set it on the brass plate. "M," I said. "Promise kept, and then some." The cottonwoods along Dairy Creek rustled. A meadowlark sang once and stopped. I sat there a long time, and I did not think about Brenda Hollister, and I did not think about Gregory, and I did not think about Crestline Development. I thought about a woman who planted Liberty bushes in 2008 with her own hands and told me, laughing, that the variety was named after what she wanted me to have more of. I thought about her ledger. I thought about her handwriting. I thought about a day in a hospital room when she had made me promise I would not let the land be sold. I thought about how a promise, quietly kept, is the most expensive thing a man can spend, and the cheapest one he will ever miss. If you have an HOA story of your own, a neighbor who pushed too hard, a board that forgot the line between authority and abuse, drop it in the comments below. I read them. I pass the worst ones along to the defense fund. And hit the subscribe button before you go. Next week, I'm telling you about a Montana rancher who outlawyered a Fortune 500 pipeline company with nothing but a 3-ring binder and a wife who knew better than everyone in the room. Emily would have liked that one too.
And that's how Brenda Hollister turned her own megaphone into a confession. 90 days in jail, $75,000 in restitution, a lifetime HOA ban in Oregon. Her husband out of the planning commission, a $216,000 kickback that never happened. On a big record, broadcast, and now a matter of public record. Here's what Tom Brooks understood that his neighbor didn't. Power isn't volume. Power is preparation. He didn't stop her flyer. He didn't stop her broadcast. He didn't stop the caravan. He lets each one of them become evidence in chance that nobody could untangle by the time the cops came out. Oregon's Right to Farm Act exists for exactly this reason, to protect the people who feed the rest of us from the people who just want to run them off. If you ever been bullied by an HOA, strong-armed by a developer, or gaslit by a board that forgot its own bylaws, tell me below. What happened? How you fought back? How you wish you had? I read every comment. And the worst one sometimes becomes the next week. Hit subscribe before you go. Next week, a Montana Ranger, a Fortune 500 pilot, and a 3-ring binder that changed everything. You won't want to meet this.